News 12 Sports with Pat Murphy.
Great news regarding Bills tight end Kevin Everett. He moved his arms and legs today. And doctors now believe that's the wrong video, by the way. That is.
I'm going to tell you all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom, you're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back wherever you are around the world to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name is Luis Jimenez. I am your host and creator of this program. We are live, so you never know what might happen here on this show. Sometimes we totally blunder it. Sometimes we ask very awkward questions. Sometimes it's awesome. Sometimes this show's pretty awesome. So please like, share, and subscribe because sometimes we're pretty awesome. Before we get started with today's show with John Greenewald and Jane and Rather, I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes that you hear on the show. Bandcamp link is in the description below. Go check them out. I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat that was here early. We already got a $5 super chat donation. Thank you so much, Matthew Wright. We'll get to that question in a moment. Josh and Artemis are in the house. BN, J. Allen Heineken, which is still, I think, my favorite name in the UFO community. Simon Flywood Shaken, Awaiting Aliens is here. Laura Sosa, Dimensional Babe. Let's see here. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show is here. Aaron Desario, who's a moderator. Thank you for being here, bud. Truly appreciate it. Speaking of Discord, we've got links not only for John Greenewald, but we got links for Jane and her channel, UFO Jane. And then we've got Rather Be Squidding, who's got his channel as well called Rather Be Squidding. So go support their channels if you haven't already. Let's see here. What else do I have to bring up? I'm sure there's a couple more things. Yes, want to say thank you to the Patreon members. Patreon members, thank you guys for all the donations. Anytime you guys donate money to the show, we're always incredibly humbled and thankful. If you can't donate money to the show, don't sweat it. The show's 100% free. There's no paywalls here, including for our Discord, which we go and hang out every Friday night. So if you haven't joined our Discord, go join it. It's free. It's fun. It's all the rage. Let's see here. Other than that, let's get started. Because today's going to be a fun show. We've only got John for an hour, so let's do this. Let's bring on our co-host, UFO Jane Kyle, Mr. Rather Be Squidding. Guys, how we doing?
Doing well.
Excellent.
I don't think an hour is going to be long enough.
An hour's never long enough with John Greenewald. But again,
I always leave here wanting more.
We've been doing a little bit of a dry run of sort of our new format of what our new format's going to kind of look like. Mm-hmm. Come mid to late April. So hour-long interviews I think are going to be all the new thing now. I'm setting the hour-long interview standard.
Gotta leave them wanting more.
Yeah, exactly. Leaves them wanting more, but also leaves us the opportunity to talk about other things, and also comment on just maybe some things that our guests say.
And get ourselves into lots of trouble.
Yeah, it's a better. You know what, Jane? Hour 2 will be the opportunity for us. It'll be the. I will come up with some some very clever marketing on this, but something along the lines of hour 2 is, like the trouble hour, like where we might say the thing that sets off the community. There's always a thing that somebody says that gets absolutely blown out of proportion. But let's do it. Let's bring on our friend, curator, creator, FOIA king, Mr. John Greenewald. John, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing incredibly well that you're here. Because
thank you.
A lot of stuff has happened, man.
Yeah, you guys are causing a lot of trouble. That's what's happening.
Man, all right. You just
Well,
want to jump
you've been
right
busy
into
too.
it, John. You want to jump right into it, don't you?
No, I'm giving you guys a hard time, man. I support trouble. I mean, I support good times.
Well, okay. So let's start with the ODNI, the 17 new pages. I'm curious. I mean, you've been doing the rounds. I'm sure there are some of these questions you've already been asked before, so I apologize for that. But the first thing I'll say is congratulations. This went mainstream, which was awesome. It got picked up by a lot of publications, including The Hill. They talked about it, and they interviewed you as well, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, they did, yeah. And that went on and kind of snowballed. Fox News, one of Fox News's flagship shows called Special Report, which is usually hosted by Brett Baer. They focused on it too, serious coverage, no X-Files music, so that's always a plus. Usually Fox, no matter the news or the local, always loves to put that in there. But it was great to see, especially in the time we live in, that this got some attention.
How often have you, this is totally off topic, but how often have you gone into the studio for these interviews? Or is it you just like always so breaking and everything's virtual now anyways?
Quite a few times over the years I've been to Fox for I would say about 2 or 3 of the interviews over the years. Univision, which are all mostly shooting at Universal Studios, so been down there quite a few times. So it's a mix. I'm sorry.
Is it stressful when you're in the like at Fox?
No, not really. I love it. I've done it for a while, so you kind of get comfortable with the cameras. It's how I fell in love with television and ended up producing and directing myself for quite a few years. But I started television when I was 17. The NBC was the first one that I ever did. It was a national show. It was based on Whitley Strieber's book. And that wasn't a studio environment, but they sent crews to the house and even to my high school. I was in high school then, shot me at school. So yeah, I've done it a long time. And of course I more get nervous that I'm going to mess up, that I'm going to say something stupid or look dumb or not, nail it. And I try so hard to nail it, because then once I started working behind the scenes, you see that other side where you get somebody in the chair and they bomb, right? They're horrible. Well, you've invested all this money, and
that's been me before.
Well, but you know what? Everybody does it. I've bombed myself, and you just learn from it and move on. So over the years, to go back to your question, studio time quite a bit. I prefer that environment just because it's fun. But on top of that, it's just more controlled. But in the time of COVID, pretty much everybody does this over Zoom and Skype and StreamYard and all that.
Yeah. Sorry, we can get back on track.
What do you got, Raj?
No worries. I love talking about the entertainment side because I geek out over it.
Well, yeah, I thought the classified DIRD that you were, or not DIRD, but the UNDI report that you got was very interesting. Mostly interesting for what we didn't get. For example, the shapes were all redacted. Do you have any complaints about what was redacted? Specifically like the shapes being redacted. I've heard people argue that, well, if our adversaries knew the shapes that we associated with UFOs, they might be able to fool our systems. But on the other hand, redacting shapes seems kind of ridiculous. Just kind of curious to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. No, did anything stick out to me as frustrating? Yeah, any redactions are frustrating to me because in my mindset, I want to know everything. But where I also can accept stuff like this is that I understand why redactions are there. So what I want to quickly address is there are some redactions that are understandable. And as much as everybody wants to see everything, there are those that talk about our weapon systems, our capabilities, our vulnerabilities. And as much as, yes, we want to see some of those redactions removed, those are reasonable. You don't want to reveal your vulnerabilities to your enemies. And by redacting that, you shield it. But you bring up the shapes, and that was something that I'm fighting in the appeal, that is putting up a case that says, no, you can't do this. Why would a shape be a threat to national security to reveal? Whether it is a radar aversion, okay, maybe, but it still didn't really, you can reveal the shapes without saying that this particular shape was able to circumvent our sensors or whatever. So that's what I'm putting up a case with, that as long as there's no identifying markings or sensitive information revealed in a still frame of a video or a photograph or a diagram, because those are the three things that are likely underneath those big black boxes in the shape section. As long as nothing sensitive is there, then I believe that in my appeal, hopefully they will grant it in part. And if you're not aware, one thing that obviously is bantered about a lot right now are drones. And there is speculation that some of these shapes could resemble drones and essentially classified technology, or our ability to see our adversaries' technology. So they want to conceal that. My argument in the appeal was that I was able to get a page declassified that was connected to a UAP encounter, what they tagged UAP. It was brought up in a UAP request where with the USS Stout, they had this encounter. The Snoopy team goes out. They're the visual imagery guys. They go out with the cameras and take pictures. Went out and snapped at least 3 photographs that were in this declassified, what appeared to be a PowerPoint slide. One of which was redacted. The other 2 were there. One of which was a clear quadcopter drone. There's no doubt about it. But it was unidentified. It wasn't tagged as our own, or some shipmate that decided to go out and, fly his drone on the deck, or Chinese or Russian or whatever. So they couldn't identify it. My whole point with bringing that up is that when it comes to drones and Snoopy teams going out and taking photographs, I've got them released before. So if there is anything drone related under there, I believe that it should be unredacted. If they still maintain the redactions, then that's kind of telling that they will show us unidentified drones that they cannot identify, but they didn't conceal it. And now we have this in the report where they, from top to bottom, blacked out the entire thing. So for me, that was telling, frustrating, but very telling on what we're dealing with.
Well, if national security was such an issue, these shapes should be unclassified, because if we're putting out the possibility that these are drones, especially in a swarm type situation, and we always reference this article by Tyler Rogaway in The Drive about a very real problem with this. And so if you want Americans to be aware of this and see something, if they see something, say something, these should be declassified, right? Like, because you want civilians to be able to look in the sky and go, oh my God, that's a possible one of these drone swarms I've been hearing about. I better call somebody, so that way they can look into it. Because that's the whole premise of that article is because there's such a stigma to this topic, it leaves a really great vulnerability for our enemies to make drones that look like UFOs, so nobody reports them, and out of fear of getting fired or whatever. And so if they really want to kill that stigma, if they really want people to start reporting these things because they do believe it's a real issue, then those shapes should be seen.
Yeah, but that's operating off the assumption they want the public's help. And there's no indicator that they want the public involvement at all. There's also every indicator.
Well, why wouldn't they though? That's
hey, look, you're speaking to the choir.
That is really silly, because if it's an actual issue, because that's the crux of Stephen Greenstreet's argument, is that these are drone swarms, and more than likely that's what these things are. And it just keeps showing that that's what these things are. And all of these reports, especially when you really dissect them on the level that he does. But you should want your public to know about these things and make them aware that this could be a very potential safety hazard and clues to a possible terrorist attack, because that's what we're talking about here, right? At worst case scenario, these drones can be used in a terrorist attack.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. I mean, again, to go back to the same point, they don't want any involvement with the public. So not only do they not want the involvement, they don't want the knowledge. They don't want the public to know anything about what they're doing. And then on top of that, and I'm not supporting it, by the way, I'm just giving the lay of the land when it comes to these programs and this research, that they don't venture beyond the military installations that are being encroached upon, the training areas. They go out of their way to say that that is what they are focusing on. So they don't want anything to do with the public. What was interesting about this report, however, was the inclusion, or I would say the expansion, of the FBI's involvement. In the public report, they were mentioned, but mentioned very much in brief. In the classified version, I was able to get a appendix that did not appear in the public version that was all about the FBI's involvement in UAP investigation. So it showed from a domestic law enforcement angle, they were then essentially taking over once the investigation would likely exit the boundary of a military installation or military border, because they can't go around and knock on doors, but the FBI can if they're investigating a potential crime. So that was revealing to me, because I didn't really think the FBI was that involved. The talk of the town has always been the military itself, ODNI doing this report, heading the task force, DOD involvement, Navy primarily submitting reports, Air Force, not really, but they're there somewhere. So you hear a lot about that, but don't really hear about the FBI. So does that support that there is a domestic crime being committed? Yeah, maybe. Or is it just the safety net that once they do exit the borders of the military installation or facility, that they can then call upon on a FBI team that specializes going out and then continuing that investigation with civilians if need be? I don't really have a exact answer for it, but it was revealing to see that as well. One quick point about the drones, and I'm all about skeptical arguments. Trust me. I mean, I wrestle with what we are really dealing with, and I hope we do get into the classified technology angle too, because I do get a lot of heat for that, and I'm happy to address it. But sticking with the drones for a second, we have to take into consideration that if this was really the root of a lot of this, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it, even some of it, you would think out of the cases that they investigated, the 144, that it appears from, again, the public version and what was revealed in the classified version, that they focused on cases with witness testimony, and in the majority of them, or it seems to be in the majority, where they had multiple what they called reliable systems essentially backing up the sighting. So it wasn't a pilot coming forward with a story and just relaying that, and so they just take notes and go, okay, so you saw a light, that's not what this is. It was, yes, they may have saw a light or saw a craft or whatever they saw, but in addition to that, they had, in some cases, multiple sensors, and others a sensor of a reliable system backing up all of that. And with all of those resources, all of that data that they could analyze in the 144 cases, we learned this in the public one, so this isn't new, but they were only unable to identify one as a balloon. Not a single one was a drone. Not a single one. So why is that? Is it because they do see them? And yes, that's part of the conversation, clearly, with the document that I got out from the Navy about the USS Stout. So it's undeniable that drones are part of this conversation, right, and I believe that. But if the task force supports that they looked at the best of the best and they weren't able to peg one, that's pretty revealing to me.
Right. Well, I think it's also like, it's okay. It could be both. It could very much be both. And I've also advocated that if the UFO community ends up being responsible for helping declassify things so we could catch more things like this, that's a huge win. Huge win. So yeah, I agree. But John, or rather, and Jane, any questions?
Well, yeah, I thought that one of the most interesting things was something that was released in the declassified version, or the redacted version, which was the GeoInt seems to have photos and videos apparently that are referenced in this document. Were you previously aware of that, or did you file a FOIA immediately for those?
Yes. So that was revealing in the classified report in regards to photos and videos in the GeoInt section. That was not the geospatial intelligence section. That was not revealed before. So that was intriguing to me. That is most likely the NGA. the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, sometimes falsely referred to as the NGIA. That is wrong. It is the NGA. But I have had open requests for them for some time. So whatever they have and whatever they contributed to this report has been involved in my case since last June, and likely even prior. I had another one as well that I had filed previously, both of which are still open. With sticking with photos and videos, though, what I was also aware of was that in addition to the obvious ones we all banter about, the gimbal, FLIR, and Go Fast, the Navy had denied me access to 100% of the reports, the photos, and the videos, however many there are, that the Navy submitted over to the task force. They said everything was classified. I wrote about this, I think, last year or maybe earlier this year. I don't know. Everything blends together. But anyway, sometime in the last 6 to 12 months. And so I was denied access to all of that information. I appealed on the basis that through my 2-year FOIA trek to get the gimbal, FLIR, and Go Fast officially released, and I've got all the paperwork to go along with it, we were able to prove with that it was unclassified. So with my argument and the Navy's statement, they couldn't argue that it was unclassified from the get-go. So my appeal was, there's no possible way that we just stumbled on the only 3 unclassified, but everything else is classified when it comes to the imagery. Take out the metadata, take out the ship's location. Hey, take out the ship name for all I care. Let's see the visual imagery. Long story short, I won that appeal. So the appellate authority at the U.S. Navy, which is higher than the FOIA office, they are tasked to look at arguments like this. So what I had created as an appeal, they took it over, and a lawyer that works within the Navy looked at it, inside JAG, looked at it and said, John's right. They granted the appeal and remanded the request back to the Navy, and it's currently being processed. So I'm hopeful that at least something will come out. I mean,
you see all of our jaws just hit the floor, right? We're like,
yeah, and
maybe new video, John Greenewald.
Hey, I hope. I will never promise. Let me stress that.
That's gonna send the internet into you. Said the
it
thing,
is.
John. Video,
but
possible video coming.
But let me cut off at the pass any skeptics who might say they're just going to deny it. Generally, under FOIA, when something is denied, which it was, then when you appeal and you win, they can't turn around and give you the same answer, because then you're in a never-ending loop in perpetuity. Because then I'd put up the same argument, the appellate authority would say he's right, and then it would just keep going. So it doesn't work like that. So they're going to have to figure out a different exemption. And once they got B1, which is national security, shot down, pardon the pun, I was able to fight that. Now they're going to have to fall back on something, and it's going to be a lot harder. And for those who watch my channel, you'll know, like probably close to 2 years ago, or maybe a little longer, that was the argument that I was talking about when I was pursuing the official release of the gimbal, FLIR, and Go Fast. Now, some people may ask, well, why? Who cares? We already had it. I was seeking the full video. So if there was something longer, that was my argument. Give me the whole thing and hopefully give me a higher resolution. Well, that went through the process and obviously was successful, and all the documentation supports that FOIA pushed them to do that release. It was a proactive release. It was to save face, in my opinion, but they knew that they were in a conundrum. That same conundrum has now come to pass again. And it was, hey, John, this is national security. You can't have it. So I fight back and say, well, this is why I can have it, and won that appeal. So I think they're going to be in a corner again.
And what's your kind of general sentiment on the whole FOIA process and classification levels? Do you think things are kind of working as you'd hope they'd work, or do you think there's things that, we could be lobbying Congress to enact modifications or laws to, help out the problem of overclassification and make some of these processes go a little smoother?
I think there's definitely an overclassification when it comes to UAP. I believe that is solidified through now appeals that I've won, and that I've only mentioned one. There's quite a few that I've written about. And my point being is that the FOIA offices are trying to really clamp down to where appellate authorities are seeing these appeals and going, no, sorry guys, you can't do that. So there is definitely an overclassification. Is that because of FOIA? Is that because it's UAP? I'm not really sure. But more broadly speaking about FOIA, I would never say that the process is broken because, look, I've got over 3 million reasons to prove to you it's not broken. You can extract information and you can get results if you're patient and you live long. But you can do it. But it definitely needs some Band-Aids and some fixing, and it's on crutches in some areas. And the waits of time that people like me wait for information to come, some of these silly decisions where, they again classify something, but clearly it's not supposed to be, and you win those types of appeals. A lot of people don't appeal, by the way. So they'll file the request. The agency says, no, sorry, it's classified, and then they give up. And that's what the majority of people do. So you'll see me post about this a lot, but a lot of FOIA people will post always appeal, those 2 words, always appeal. So you'll see that throughout Twitter and social media when we talk and banter about FOIA. But anyway, so there's that issue as well. And it just needs manpower. I mean, it needs more people to be in these offices and handle these cases, because as frustrated as I get, they're human, I mean, they're there doing their day job and punching the time clock, and they're overworked. They just don't have the resources. And I don't know if you saw this, rather, this may be the root of your question, but yesterday they had a hearing about the Freedom of Information Act, and I think it was the Judiciary Committee, I think. But regardless, they had a hearing yesterday and brought in, a couple people that work in FOIA-related issues within the U.S. government. And although I don't agree a lot with Dianne Feinstein ever, she nailed it while she was up there questioning one of the individuals, and she was saying, what can we do to fix this? I mean, she was just like bare bonesing it. What do you need? What resources what can we do for you? And they didn't have an answer. Like, they were just, well, we're trying every day. We go into work and we try and make sure that the FOIA and Feinstein just wasn't having it. And she's like, look, you're not answering my question. What is it we can do? And they didn't know. And that was very telling for me, kind of dry. You watch those things, it's tough to stay awake. But when you really kind of look at what they're talking about, these are the people at nearly the top of the throne here of the FOIA world, and they don't have a fix. Like, they really can't go into a senator that's a prepared hearing and they don't have a fix. That was telling to me. But it really does come down to giving them the adequate resources to allow us as citizens to access that information. And until somebody has the you-know-whats to actually go in there and say what they need, nothing's going to change. And they were bantering about the Freedom of Information Act, and I think they called it the FOIA Improvement Act or something like that, from 2016, I think it was passed, and how a lot of that just really kind of fell to the wayside. So they've been doing this for years and they haven't fixed it. And hopefully somebody will step up and do it.
You just kind of inspired me to add something to the Big Phone Home 3.
The Big FOIA Home?
Yeah, the Big FOIA Home. I mean, why not add, one of these things, one of our demands is to help us clean up the FOIA process. Help us make it more stable and a better way for us, the public, to access information without bothering you guys.
Yeah.
But it clearly needs fixing. I feel like that clearly needs fixing. That's a bipartisan issue that has nothing to do with UFOs. I mean, who would not want to strengthen FOIA?
And the hearing yesterday really showed that bipartisan approach to it. That they weren't arguing up, at their seats about who was going to ask, what the questions were and stuff like that. They were very united in their questions about fixing this. And although I didn't see the whole hearing, because again, they're very dry, and I'm a geek with this stuff, and I like snoozing at my desk trying to listen to it. But regardless, though, it really is a bipartisan effort to fix this. And the idea of government transparency, look, we've got these safeguards. I know that some people think FOIA is broken, will never reveal anything. It really does. But in the same respect, it has safeguards to ensure that no real sensitive information comes out. So we should fund it. We should give it, more resources, so people like me, who from the Obama library gets a 16-year, time estimate that I'm going to be waiting, and that's not an exaggeration for those who don't know the story, but 16 years. And as much as I thought that was laughable, the George W. Bush Library on the similar request, but for UFO, UAP related information, George W. Bush Library, 20 years. So it's like, wait a minute, I'm going to be a grandpa if I'm lucky, walking around going, I remember that when I filed that so many years ago, and I'm finally getting it, and I'll probably forget what in the heck I was even going for. But those are the types of issues that need to be fixed and reformed. And if those reformations require me to do something different in how I request the information, I'm all for it. I in my appeal, and here's some new information. I haven't even posted about this yet. I tried to get an expedited processing to the Obama library. I was denied, and I appealed, and I lost that appeal today. So they're not all wins. And they claim that I didn't put up an adequate case to prove that UFOs and UAPs are of media interest, and that it does not, that the topic as a whole, I was not able to quote unquote prove that the general public's view on this topic makes them question the integrity of the government. I cited the reality that mainstream media coverage happened on cover of Drudge Report, Vice News, MSN, all these different mainstream publications, not blogs or anything. I mean, I was able to go through quite a bit. Then I cited actual real reputable polling agencies that would poll the general public saying, do you trust the government? All about integrity and trust, and off the charts, of course, like the general public doesn't think that the government is being honest on the UFO issue. How much more?
Because you're not verified. They checked your Twitter. They're like, you don't have a blue check mark.
Oh yeah, that debacle. Yeah. Well, Twitter doesn't like me anyway, I guess. But
yeah, I don't know what's going on there. It's really weird.
No, it definitely is. But I think that the grander point is if you're only supposed to prove media interest, which at the mere mention that the Obama library had documents, I didn't even publish anything, and it was worldwide news. So if that's not immense media interest, I don't know what is.
Right.
And then when you deal with reputable polls showing that the general public doubts the U.S. government on this issue, I don't know what else you can do to prove that the issue goes to the heart of the general public's doubt in the integrity and the honesty of the U.S. government. So I have an option now to essentially sue and get a judge's approval, but you're talking about quite a lot of money to do that. So
can somebody else request the same information at this point, or will they say we already got that FOIA request and we can't process it again?
No, you can absolutely request the same thing, and then it just goes in with a new case number, and you're in line waiting 16 years with the rest of us.
Wow.
Right.
So
I was going to ask, can we lean on you to help us again form another template letter that includes the strengthening, asking Congress and to strengthen the FOIA process.
Absolutely.
Make it easier for the average citizen to get this information and stop going through so much red tape. 16 years.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of how in some parts it's broken.
Yeah.
And that as journalists, as citizens, we have a right for this to work. It should work better.
Absolutely. And to answer your question, yeah, I am more than happy to help. I think it's an important issue. And again, broadly speaking, where it's not just about UFOs and getting UFO information out, but reforming a very important and very powerful system, making it better. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do that because, not to repeat it, but yesterday's hearing was so telling that they couldn't go into Congress and say, okay, we need this, and that will speed up everything. But instead, they're talking about reform acts that were passed, 6 years ago, and obviously nothing really changed. And they were talking about statistics and how the backlogs, or how many cases they're behind, has risen for most cases, or for most agencies. So nothing's working yet. So they need to sit down and really focus on fixing it. And it seems like Congress wants to do that, but nobody's telling them how.
Yeah.
And do you get the idea that the 16-year timeline is a legitimate lack of resources on their end? Or do you think it might be a delay tactic where they're just saying, well, we're going to have to review every single page in the Obama library when they could maybe just do a Control F and review the 12 pages that have UAP on them?
Yes. I think it's the culmination of a couple things. No, it is the review. They are forced to review. And one thing I didn't point out, those thousands of files, which at this point estimates are over 100,000 pages on UFOs and UAP and OSAP and ATIP, those are just the unclassified files. So that didn't make it into a lot of the news stories. But the key here is that's just the unclassified stuff. The classified material is still being tallied and reviewed. So they haven't confirmed that there is anything classified, but they are looking at that. So to go back to your question, yeah, I think it's all of the above. But to be honest with you, and not to get too much in the weeds, but what I think it is the Obama Library is just getting their feet on the ground. And the complex queue, so you go in line, there's complex queue, simple queue. So I'm number 87 in the complex queue. So there's 86 cases ahead of me or so. They say that those cases have accumulated 4.5 million pages that need to be reviewed. In my opinion, what needs to happen is somebody needs to go in there, and the library has to push back on people like me. And I'm actually okay with that. They need to push back and say your request is too broad. I can't believe I'm saying that, but that's one of the only fixes here. Because if they're just taking a request and they go, oh, well, that yielded 250,000 pages, put them in line, no problem. We'll review them all. Well, you clearly don't have the resources because, let's face it, a lot of us are going to be dead by the time this stuff comes out. I hope I'm not.
Well, I don't want to be behind you with your 16-year wait. I have just have like
I remember it's 88.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, but I think that needs to happen. Look, we need a lot more afforded to us as citizens, but they need a lot more resources also, and they need training. I honestly believe that there's a happy medium.
Shouldn't we invest in the head count shouldn't we give more security clearance and training to people whose purely are to advocate for public transparency and negotiate on the behalf of the taxpayer? Like, why can't we just have more people that
you said it. They're advocating for transparency, so there's no way they're getting in there.
Right. Well, there you go. There's the rub. Like,
I mean,
can't we just hire more people? It seems like we should have enough money to.
Yeah, joking aside, you're absolutely right. Why don't they? And so where are those resources? I mean, we're sending. Well, I don't want to get political. I mean, there's just large dollar amounts that are going to all these different corners of the globe and to our government, so on and so forth. How important is transparency? And I don't have an answer for that. Like, I'm not sitting here saying that transparency and FOIA officers are, more or less important than anything else. But regardless, I mean, it's definitely low on the totem pole. But again, it just seems like the leadership doesn't know what the right answer is either. And in any company who's leading a team and their effort is to reform that company to be more efficient and so on, if those leaders aren't cutting it, what do you do?
Yeah.
Get rid of them. And I mean, look, I'm not advocating for anybody to lose their job, but for me, just to hear
if
those
they're not
answers,
doing
I
it,
don't
if
know.
they're not
I
doing
don't know.
their job,
they're not doing it. Yeah.
Let's advocate for them losing it. I think that's okay. I think that's okay because that's what the whole process is about. Listen, we've only got 17 minutes left with you, and I still want to play a game. But before we do that, let's segue to this next topic.
Wait. Can I just ask one more ODNI report question?
Yes, please.
So there's an intro where there's a 3-letter agency that's redacted that supposedly contributed to all of this. My guess is it's CIA. Do you have any other guesses? Because the other thing too isn't the National Security Act of 1947 also referenced in there? It was in the Gillibrand Amendment. I know that I think that created the CIA. So it seems remiss it's not in there. Do you have theories on what that agency is?
I theories like I wouldn't bet money. CIA is bantered about a lot. The NURO had come up in my head when I first saw that, the National Underwater Reconnaissance Office, I think it is. That's a agency that has been rumored about, but is pretty much in existence. I mean, people have talked about it like it existed, but it's never been officially acknowledged. So I think the NURO would fit in there. CIA is one. Definitely an intriguing redaction, and I wouldn't bet money on any of those, meaning I really don't know. It's just speculation, but those are some options and some great guesses.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Sorry.
It should be noted too, the classified version had NASA, the public report did not, and the classified version had the Marine Corps, and the public version did not, and then the Office of Naval Intelligence was not in the classified report. So those could be human errors, but it was interesting to see the difference between what was in the classified version versus the public.
Rather, did you have any last questions before we move on?
Yeah, not on that. I'm going to look up neuro though. I hadn't heard of that before. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So this is a great segue. Dimensional Babe says, "Keep my sock puppet's name out of your mother bleeping mouth." So we were talking about this backstage, and so what are your thoughts, man? I don't want to set this up as a question. I just want to get your thoughts on it.
On what, Luis? What are we talking about? We're talking about sock puppets?
All right, yeah, we're talking sock puppets.
Will Smith?
Yeah, we're talking about the slap heard around the world.
Oh my God, yeah, we're all right, John. Jesus, man.
Okay.
We're talking about all the trouble that Rather got himself into and got us into
the Chris Rock of ufology.
Yes, Chris Rock of ufology.
Yeah, no, look. Here's what I would say about this, because the dirty nature of what a lot of people reference as UFO Twitter, but for whatever reason, it resonates on Twitter more than anywhere else. The dirty behavior comes out with these sock puppet accounts. And although none of us are going to be able to prove whether or not Luis Elizondo has these sock puppets and whatever, sounds like he admitted to you guys that he did. That's what I took from that interview. I did watch that just because I was fascinated that it came up. And so my kudos to you guys, because I won't lie, that was on my agenda to ask him if he ever came back to my program. I've tried to get him back. He's been too busy, he says. We were hoping for April. I reached out again. He didn't address the invitation, but he responded to something else. So look, I don't know if I'm going to get him back. But I think those are important questions, because this type of dirty behavior from so many different people, and especially in the last 2 or 3 months, has gotten nasty. And to now add in the large possibility that he himself, meaning Luis Elizondo, is out there preaching about being team players. Let's remove this nastiness from the conversation. Let's work together. Pinning tweets about being honest with everybody and treating everybody with respect. When you pin that on your Twitter account, I would imagine that you would mean it. And for him to allude that he was protecting his family, I'll be honest with you, as much as I've been a critic, and I've seen a lot of other critics come out that are much more nasty than I ever became. I don't feel I was nasty, but I was definitely a critic, and have been on certain parts of the story. I've never seen anybody go after his family. I just didn't. So that explanation of defending his family, I felt fell to the wayside. I was surprised that even came up. I know that there was recently a documentary, I think you guys talked about it, that kind of dug into maybe his family members' purchases on property and stuff like that was very controversial. And sure, I mean, of course you're going to be offended at that because it was illuminating in some areas. But that wasn't what this was about. So for him saying that he was protecting his wife and stuff like that, look, I used social media a lot. I've never seen that. And the firing back hypothetical to Rather, I will also be honest and say I was very let down to hear that. I know it was a hypothetical, and I don't want to go into too much of my personal feelings to digest or dissect what he was doing, but that was not cool. And I'll say that publicly. I have no qualms about it. That was a nasty retort to try and give a hypothetical. And even though it was framed as such, I was very let down to see that. And it makes me question that pinned tweet. I go back to that, about wanting the the world to hear honesty from him and treating everybody with respect. And I've always publicly acknowledged that as much of a critic as I was, he would always, once we started talking, it wasn't always the case, but once we really started talking and found that common ground, he was always respectful back to me. But some of these allegations about the sock puppets and stuff like that, a lot of those sock puppets were not nice to me. So if it turns out that it really is him and we'll likely never be able to prove it, that's a big letdown. It really is. I mean, it's one thing to critique what people say, what their claims are. People do it to me all the time. But when you make it personal, that's a whole nother level. But then when you create the illusion that you're somebody else, that you're playing make-believe with these sock puppets and going out there and having an alter ego, that to me, it's a big deal. It really is. And then you look at those that surround him. And we all know, I think we can all agree that Luis Elizondo has a lot of great people that follow him. I'm not saying that this is everybody, but there is a very small percentage that are big fans, and they will come after you viciously if you say anything remotely close to being negative. And so it's cultivating a very dangerous core element here. And that danger is something that's concerning to me, just because over the years I have seen people that have lost it in certain situations. You know, you go back to the Bill Cooper days where you can get wound up in these topics and really start to lose it. And I'm not saying that that's what we're seeing on Twitter. I'm saying it's a possibility of what we're seeing on Twitter with some of these accounts, because they are just going crazy in certain areas of that conversation. So going back to the sock puppet thing, if that's being essentially encouraged, right? That you create these alter egos and stoke the flames and stoke the fires and stuff like that. That's dangerous, man. It really is. And I hope that more people speak out about it. That's why it was kudos to you. I was surprised at the answers. They were very telling. And although, you know, I'm not ready to just sit here and go, oh, look, I know for a fact it's him, because I don't know. I hope he does address it in the future and just say, look, you guys have been talking about this faceless bureaucrat. No, that definitely wasn't me. Although I have had, you know, another account or whatever. But going back to what he said as the retort question hypothetical, that essentially kind of shut down the conversation. That was by design. I'm sorry. That was. So when you go to an extreme like that, you're trained to do that in an interrogation. That's as far as I'll go. So for him to do that extreme retort was such a letdown. It really was. Even if he didn't have the sock puppets to do that on the show live with you guys, I was let down.
So then, am I wrong? I mean, because like I've been really advocating, because this is a tough one for me, because I like Lou, I really do.
So do I, by the way.
And yeah, no, and I think everyone here on the panel does as well. But I've been advocating for the idea of, you know, humans are going to human. When I've been going through, and I don't have all of these tweets in context, none of them were, at least not that I've seen, insanely inflammatory like some people get on Twitter. It's not there's no curse bombs, there's no F bombs, there's no, you know, let's take them out, let's, you know, nothing like with that vicious intent.
Sure.
But there are things on there that raise doubt, that start fights, that are petty in a lot of cases where it's just like, why are we even here on this? But I've also been, you know, because there's obviously a segment of this conversation who thinks this is not a big deal. This is not a problem. I don't have an issue with this at all. Like, people have sock puppet accounts all the time. Athletes, political figures, all sorts of people. And so they've convinced themselves that this is okay. But personally, I think you've this idea of putting your heroes in a place where they have to be perfect, and there's no such thing as a perfect human. There's no such thing. There's no perfect messenger for this. So when I see moments of weakness of somebody humanizing, like getting to see a humanized version of this person and through this sock puppet account, and like, oh, he is he is he does take things very, very personally. He doesn't like attacks, like even when they're not attack, when they're just simple, excuse me, logical, retorts to what is being put on the table as fact or truth or whatever. So am I wrong when I'm trying to sort of put people in a place where, listen, if this disappoints you, if you're really hurt by this, and I never thought about tactics or version as far as the hook part of this, that is kind of nasty, but this idea of if you're disappointed in this, you set your expectations so high. Like, you should expect stuff like this from people because people are flawed. What do you say to something like that?
Well, for me, I would absolutely be on board with you if he lashed out. I'll use myself as an example, just to make sure I'm not placing accusations anywhere else. Yeah. So if Lou Elizondo's account comes after me, right, and really he loses it because he thinks that what I said was wrong, I would absolutely support that. He's human. Like, people are going to lash out, but that's not what he's doing. He's creating, and again, operating off the assumption that this is him. And he's doing this tactic, which I didn't bring up, but collecting intel. I mean, what a weird thing to say. You can collect intel.
That's my thing.
Yeah, that to me was I don't know if alarming is the right word, but collecting intel. You could do that with your own account. Rather, I can go to your timeline with my own account and collect intel on what you're doing, and you'll never know, right? I mean, that's right. Let's talk. If we want to talk about intel, let's talk about it. So these types of allusions to what he was doing again are alarming, and yeah, I mean, I don't support that tactic. And as somebody that I'll admit, I watched those accounts, and Faceless Bureaucrat was not the first. And I'll just straight out say it, No Name Bureaucrat, which is still online. Yeah, if whomever operates this, we'll put it this way, you can see that they are the same person. And there's a new one floating around, and this new one even went after me the other day. And it was, not vicious or anything like that or violent, but clearly an attacking nature. Somebody I've never talked to before, just boom, comes out of nowhere, starts calling me Goff Stooge or whatever. So there are these types of tactics that I think are something that he should address. We're not talking about a sports star or a celebrity that wants to maybe start a rumor or support a narrative or something like that. No, these are going out there with boxing gloves. So for me, that's a huge difference when you juxtapose that with celebrities who maybe want to take part in a conversation. Rather, you had posted something somewhere that I stumbled on where you said brilliantly in the confines of a tweet the difference between a sock puppet, an alt, and what was the third one? I forget what the third
anonymous, one. Just an anonymous pseudonym.
And it was just brilliantly like boom, boom, boom. And I was like, God, that really makes sense. Great. Well done. So that's really what we're talking about, to where you're talking about those alt accounts that are maybe taking part in conversations, or again, used for PR and stuff like that. And, get conversations going. That's all much different than let's create a boxing glove account and go out there, not necessarily with guns blazing, but with boxing gloves ready to duke it out, and encouraging those that do have guns blazing. And I've tried to make it clear privately with Mr. Elizondo, and this is as far as I'll go about a private conversation, that more people need to speak up. And you'll notice that on my social media account, I don't beat the dead horse, but I've pointed it out that there are parts of this conversation that are getting dangerous, and using sock puppets with boxing gloves, encouraging others to take part in it, doesn't help. There was a comment that came into your chat. I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, but I think it's an excellent point. Yeah. Anon ET, the timestamp is 4:52. I just paused the chat. Okay. Eric Davis lost it on John. I wasn't cool with Eric's homophobic diatribe. That is absolutely true. Now, the only thing I'll say to Eric Davis's credit is that he used his real account. He didn't use a sock puppet. I won't even repeat to you what he said. If you're not, are you aware of it?
Yeah, I am aware of it. Yeah, this happened last year, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it was so awful,
it
and
was pretty awful.
and yeah, no, and by the way, I think my dad and my mom are listening, which is partly why I won't even allude to what it is. But it
Hi,
was
Mom and
so, it was so.
Hi,
I sent
Senior.
him the link right before because we were chatting as I was driving. So the comment was so awful. Number one, I won't repeat it, but number two, it shows, and they're all connected. They're all in the same group. Luis Elizondo talks so highly about Eric Davis and his honesty, and he can't tell a lie, and this and that. Why is there this commonality if this is true? Why are we encouraging this behavior? You know, I mean, if I were building somebody up, like let's say Luis, if I was building you up and then I saw you say that to somebody else, I'd be like, all right, dude, like let's kick back on that a little bit.
Right.
And the reason is because I'm supporting you. You guys support me, and that is awesome. And if I did that to somebody else, I would think that you guys would do the same thing. Like, hey, we invite you on our show. Can you not, go around saying stuff like that about this person? But
yeah,
that
or not
never
even
happened.
so much like, hey, listen, if you're going to, great, but you're not going to be. You're not gonna be coming back here,
Right, and that's the thing. But nothing was ever said. And there was one account, he doesn't even deserve the mention, who would tweet all that and essentially was saying I was deserving of it. And he has enough of a following for me to mention it. So they took screenshots of it, tweeted it out, and said that I was deserving of that. Nobody's
they held it up as
that.
They held it up as some kind of victory over John Greenewald.
Right.
I'm like, how are you looking past the homophobia slur in this comment to prop up your point? And that's I think what's happening with this whole conversation in the last 2 weeks is with Thomas Fessler, like, and this as well. It's like we're looking past, we're putting blinders on all of the terrible shit going on here because they agree with our point.
Yeah.
Hello? Like, what's going on here?
By the way, I don't mean to derail you. My dad just texted hello back, and then he says allude to it. So he wants to know. So I have to call Dad.
I appreciate it.
But this is where I say that it is getting dangerous. We're not talking about an anonymous account anymore. We're talking about Dr. Eric Davis, who our taxpayer dollars went to create exotic science reports with the U.S. government, and little old me, and the root of it was I said I doubted his claim. That was what it was. I didn't call him any names. I didn't even call him a liar. I mean, I know some people think by me doubting a claim, I'm immediately calling someone a liar. No, I think it's misrepresented. We can call it whatever we want, but look, I just didn't believe it. That's what set him off. So this is the type of environment that these conversations are being had in, and it's got to stop. It really does. We should be able to have these conversations and ask questions, and that's why, going back to the sock puppet conversation with these alt accounts, I really hope that they aren't his. I really truly hope.
No,
and if they aren't, I hope he comes out and says it. He says it in that pinned tweet. Let's just be honest,
Right.
And if you stay quiet on it, then that's ridiculous. It really is. And
I
it would be a huge letdown.
I would, if it is him, I would much rather have him just admit it, and I could move past that.
Right?
I mean, I could move past if he's like, yeah, I'm okay. This was stupid. I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
I would love clarification at this point. I don't have any. I was none the wiser, ignorant, not following these accounts. I wasn't in the interview when Rather asked this question. I was just watching at home, like everybody else. But now that I've seen some of the tweets, now that I've been exposed, I would like some clarification. I think personally.
Well, I can say I do know this. When somebody, and we've seen this, when somebody, and the latest example I'll use is the blunder or the miscommunication that happened between Artemis and Josh's show and Lou Elizondo. And they made some claims as to why the interview didn't happen, and he quickly came out and corrected, hey, look, this is what went down from my point of view. And
did anybody, I'm just genuine question. No. Did anybody ever find it odd that of all the people that have said stuff about Lou that he doesn't like or doesn't agree with, that he blasted their name and account and everything to his 70,000 followers, whatever he has? and highlighted that they were wrong in creating drama. Let's just say they were. I like Josh and Artemis. I've got no problem with them. I stayed out of that debate, so I've got nothing against them. But out of everybody, they decided to put them on blast because that just put the target from the crazy portion of his followers. And I want to stress, not everybody is crazy. This will be truncated and clipped and go, look what John said. But that small percentage targeted them. And I think that's not fair. I mean,
well, but here's the blowback of that is you've immediately made them an extreme version of what they were before. So now you're kind of pushing them toward the folks who are extreme on the other end of this conversation. The people who are visceral and nasty and gross against Lou Elizondo, who really hate the narrative, who go to this point where they're just like lobbing insult after insult after insult after insult. And then they see something like that happen to an account like that, and they swoop in and they're like, we got your back. We knew this was going on. Like, welcome. Come on, come to our club.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, you just created another extremist, essentially.
Yeah, I think it was like something like that was better left just unaddressed.
Just don't talk about it.
Yeah, and on look, 3-4 years ago when my following was on social media was much smaller. Sure, I would screenshot people and call them out. But at this point, I feel that I've grown to a level. I'm not gigantic. I mean, look, I can concede. I am not have a huge following on Twitter, but I also recognize I have a big enough one that if I start blasting out like, "Hey, look what this guy said. Look what this girl said," then you start creating a riot. Like a digital riot. So I've tried
a digital
to really,
army. It's a digital army. It's an organized. They're organized digital bullets.
Yeah. And I've tried to really recognize that damage can be done, and to see some of the comments that have come my way that are violent. I am not insinuating they were Luis Elizondo's sock puppets. I'm talking about other people, but there are violent comments that are thrown my way. And when I post stuff that's not UFO related, I never get that. I don't get the heat that I do when I post something, let's say, contradicts the popular narrative. And then all of a sudden, those bullets start flying my direction. Yeah. And although I can take critique of what I claim, the violent tendencies to some of these accounts is what I was trying to tell not only Mr. Elizondo, but quite a few other people. Like, hey, look, we need to start kicking back on exacerbating this and even encouraging it. Some people were encouraging it. Back off and start calling it out, and hopefully it will subside. And I hate to use this reference, but you look at January 6th and you look at the ramp up to that, and you look at the rhetoric that was started to be bantered around and the government's bad, let's go. Look at the UFO arena. We're seeing a lot of call to arms type language, call to battle, those types of those types of war phrasing, which may seem innocent at this point and like, John's crazy. We're just talking about going against the government. Well, look, you look at January 6th, some of these people were the exact same way. And it just kept escalating and escalating. And in my opinion, you look at that conversation in those nasty areas, it's escalating. And it's not just internet trolls. Those are a dime a dozen. But there are certain accounts and certain people that are getting dangerous. And they just are. And not to beat that dead horse, I'm concerned about it. I just think, if you really want to take the stigma out of this topic, then people have to remove those types of accounts from the conversation, not encourage them.
Yeah, I think also if you want to just put out this fire that is UFO Twitter, if it is you, admit it. If it's not, address it. If you're quiet, sometimes silence speaks volumes.
Well, the real faceless bureaucrat.
And who am I to make any demands of anybody? This is not a demand. This is just suggestions. It's just my suggestions.
We start seeing different intelligence people in the community. Like, it was me. It was me.
And here's one thing I want to address real quick. Eddie Fong, Thomas and Gary did not publicly apologize at all. They made excuses and they danced around it. And They did not publicly apologize to anyone. They just made a whole bunch of. They called it satire at one point. Satire, sure.
That's all nasty stuff. I mean,
yeah,
it's so ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. But okay, so we got your opinion on that.
Yeah, for what it was worth.
We're 9 minutes over, but I wanted to play a game with you. Is that okay? Do we have time
of course.
for a game? Okay, yeah. So the game is the same game that we played with Lou Elizondo. It's called Stick With It, Let's Move On, or Bullshit.
Okay.
All right, and I'm going to give you a topic, and then you have to choose one of those responses to describe that topic. You ready?
All right. Yeah, it's
we're
move
gonna
on,
go easy.
BS, or stick with it.
Yeah, we're going to go easy, and then we'll ramp it up. The FOIA process.
Stick with it.
The Big Phone Home 3.
Stick with it.
Declassifying certain elements of intelligence briefings.
Stick with it.
Aerial school sighting.
I would say stick with it. I'm just not very knowledgeable on it, but I would say stick with that. I haven't seen a huge debunk of it.
And if you know nothing about some of these topics, you got a pass button too.
Oh, I do?
If you know nothing about it.
I would still on that one I would still say stick with it.
Okay. Rendlesham Forest.
Move on.
Betty and Barney Hill.
Move on.
Lonnie Zamora.
Stick with it.
Zosterberg case from 1979.
Pass.
Stick with it?
Okay,
doesn't know anything about it. All right.
No.
Frederick Valentik. I don't know this one.
Move on.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, man. Okay, I don't.
I mean, move on's kind of harsh. It's like, let me ask a quick question. Move on as in like ignore it, or move on like
move on.
Okay, we already have as much information we're gonna get.
Yeah, we've gotten the most information we're gonna get, and let's just move on. Like we shouldn't dwell on.
Yeah, then I would stick with move on. I mean, I don't want it to come off as harsh, like that's just I'm not giving the BS. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I think with some of these cases, we've exhausted what we're gonna get.
Well, that's okay. I'm sure we'll give you a couple. We'll get at least one BS out of you. Dorothy Hawkins says, Valiant Thor at the Pentagon.
BS.
Okay. Phoenix Lights.
Move on with the caveat, not ignore it. I just think we've got everything.
Okay. Caloris sound terrifying. Or just Caloris, the Brazil case.
Pass.
It's not Brazil. Okay, I think it's Colombia. Pass. Okay.
I'm researching what you're not strongly passionate about.
Chris, we'll break this into two. Chris Bledsoe, the Bledsoe story.
Oh man, I'm gonna have people coming after me. It's BS.
BS. I agree. Bigelow Boys, as in I'm thinking Robert Bigelow.
So like the Bass stuff.
Yeah.
Stick with it because I'll be fair, and not everything is revealed yet. But I'm leaning towards the BS with the official DIA UFO angle, and they wanting it paranormal. But I think there's a lot to dissect there, so stick with it.
Okay. Grant Levant kind of asked the same question, but my question is: Kurt Russell and the Phoenix Lights. Are you telling Kurt Russell to move on? John Greenewald?
Yes.
No. The problem with a lot of those air traffic records is the FAA has a records retention schedule that wouldn't last this long. So he came out way too late to go after those types of records.
And then this is not part of the game. Thank you for playing the game. Oh, actually, I got a couple more. Bob Lazar.
BS.
Sorry, cattle mutilations.
Cattle mutilations?
Yeah.
God, it's in between stick with it and move on, meaning I'm open to new information. I just don't think we've had anything. Is it interesting? Kind of.
Okay.
So can I kind of give a gray area?
No, John, I'm going to press you on this one. Really, this is important.
So then with cattle mutilations, at this point, I would say move on.
Okay. All right. Underground Antarctic alien bases.
BS.
Someone asked earlier, your take on alien bases on the moon.
BS.
Okay. Let's see here. I had another one. Trying to remember what it was.
Did you get to Matthew Riot's question about Operation Green Merchant?
Oh, no, I didn't. No, I didn't, but I was going to ask those last two questions, and then we were going to get them out. You know what? You played the game. Congratulations, John. Thank you for playing the game. We're going to perfect this when we come back on the new show. We'll have music for it and everything. But yeah, okay, great. Awesome. That was fun. So yeah, Matthew Wright did have a question, and you can answer these as quickly as you like. Have you ever looked into Operation Green Merchant? Is that something that he's dying to be FOIA'd?
No, that doesn't ring a bell to me. I mean, maybe when I get off the air, I'd be like, oh, that. But off the top of my head, that doesn't sound familiar.
Okay. And then last question, Laura Campbell with a $5 donation. Thank you guys so much for these donations. Have you found any evidence that may indicate that China is a major roadblock to disclosure?
No. I know that the world stage is very much debated on either who's going to do it first. Will it affect something when it comes to that? I just have never seen any indication that there's any other country that's creating the problem or a roadblock or anything like that.
Okay, a couple last ones here. Secret space program.
Okay. I need clarification here. Are we talking about like
okay, secret space program that's fighting aliens?
Okay, BS.
Okay. Crop circles.
But a secret space program, I do believe that there is one, but not the Corey Good.
There was one for sure.
Okay, we're gonna talk about this next time you come back. We'll dive into that a little bit. But yes, no. Okay, Corey Good version of the story. BS.
Yeah, BS.
Okay, crop circles. I know what you want to say.
My mom will want me to say stick with it. My mom loves crop circles.
Okay.
That's a good enough reason to stick with it.
All right, that's good enough. I'll stick with that. Mom, you got him on that one.
Yeah,
Men in
on
Black.
behalf of my mother, I'll say stick with it. I'm just not a crop circle guy.
Okay, Men in Black.
You know, the reptilian side of Men in Black, those types of stories, I say BS. Nowadays, I don't really see any types of stories, so I would say move on.
Last but not least, Dino Beavers.
BS.
Okay, John Greenewald, everyone. Thank you for staying for 15 extra minutes, man. We truly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And for the record, I really want Dino Beavers to exist. Like that's all it is.
Me too.
How could you not?
And if Faceless Bureaucrat is one day revealed as a Dino Beaver that's intelligent and typing away, I'm all for it.
Well, I can tell you,
all will be forgiven.
If Faceless Bureaucrat knows about Dino Beavers, Lou Elizondo did not. So that could be a check mark for it's not his account.
Interesting.
Right, thank you so much. Thank you to Mom and Dad for just encouraging this guy and nurturing a space where he could do all of these weird FOIA requests. Because I could not imagine what I would say to a 13-year-old kid. You're doing what? Thank you. That's huge. We absolutely love this man. So thank you so much, John Greenewald.
Well, thank you.
I cannot thank you enough every time you come on the show, and thank you for supporting on the show, and thank you for committing to the Big Phone Home 3. We truly appreciate it, man.
Of course.
Your letter last time, like I told you, was the most used, I think the most successful in getting responses from our lawmakers. So you've also got skin in this game, and you, like us, believe there is a there. It's there. What it is, man, we have no clue. But again, thank you, John.
It's my pleasure, and the love is mutual. So thank you guys, and keep it up. And always fun when I can listen in while I'm finishing up work here to tune into you guys. So definitely keep it up.
Right on. I will see you soon.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
Bye, John.
Love that guy.
Yeah, I like that game. That's a fun one. It's disappointing sometimes, though. I'm like researching dangerous UFOs and who the cases I'm like really into.
Well, I think it's a
game.
It's a game we're gonna start playing with all of our guests.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's
a great game.
It's a great game. You know, so get ready for that when we come back in mid to late April. So we'll know every show. We'll be doing that. So yeah, man, that was fun. What did you guys think? Like, what were the most interesting things that John sort of shared with you or with us? Other than a new video possibly coming.
The FBI thing, that's kind of intriguing to me, because I do think that there was like some file where like the FBI like officially like offloaded like the UFO stuff. Like there was a year where they're like, we're not going to be involved in this anymore. So it makes you wonder, like, when were they brought back into the fold, and like what case triggered that? Or
Yeah, the FBI, the X-Files are real, I guess, right?
I mean, that's
there's
essentially what it is, right?
CIA even has a blog. It's called the X-Files blog, I think. Yeah.
Can you imagine if they actually like named The Office that?
I don't think that. I think there's a version of reality where that is going to happen. Like that's one of the parallel realities.
They have to be calling themselves that internally, just between themselves,
well, that's
right?
what I mean.
The
CIA even has a blog. Like it's called the X Files or had, and they absolutely, and they would tweet reference it and everything. So
how many internal arguments and fights have there been over who's going to be called Mulder or Scully? And Brian with a $20 donation, thank you so much, says you're not even safe at the Academy Awards, which is true. Yeah, I mean, I think, man, John's doing such killer work, and the fact that he gets as much BS as he does, because the thing that I find fascinating is even the people that absolutely hate him, like really, really, like the guys who are lobbing death threats.
Why does anybody hate him?
I don't know, but even those guys, when he drops something new, they're going and reading it, and they don't share it, and they're pissed off that it's coming from him, but they always consume his work.
Yeah, they love the shit on FOIA and focus on all the little flaws, but I mean it's not all bad, and what is bad, we can get better. We can pressure Congress to make it better, and try to make it better. But
I think it's
doing great work already. It can always be better, but we're getting excellent information.
Yeah, what's wrong with free information? I don't get the
free too. That's like
I don't get the hate on FOIA.
He could charge for that because he pays for the FOIAs. Like it's not free to file, especially when you appeal, or like you said, if he wants to fight for it, like this, it would be a great business model for him to put that behind a paywall of whatever and say, hey, look, this paywall is here, so I can fight. I can help fight these FOIAs. He writes books, and he's got his live streams where he I'm sure he makes income from this, but it's it's not he's got a real day job.
It's not just FOIA fees. He's hosting lots of multi-megabyte documents that cost a lot of resources. When people like me are downloading megabyte upon megabyte of secret government documents. It's those bills.
The server space is not cheap.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was another thing that I thought was amazing. And I can't believe we didn't think about this earlier, including, improving the FOIA process to the Big Phone Home initiative. I think that's, again, that goes along the lines of declassifying things. It's not a UFO specific demand, which I think is the things we should really focus on, because I think the farther we can get away from attaching UFO to a demand, it's going to be more helpful for us.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds.
But yeah, it's about, modifying and getting the processes in place such that we can have transparency and not just UFO issues, but, all of government issues.
Right. Which is a problem.
Like John was saying, where it's like, say, hey, the request was too broad. Like, just the smallest things like that. I mean, I don't know if anybody has a normal job in the world, but when a process isn't working or it's too slow, you make adjustments. This shouldn't be, I think it's just a matter of the attention being on the process, and people being a little annoying about it, right? And I love the idea, too, of people being trained on how to do FOIAs and doing them themselves.
I've told him a couple of times, he should, whenever he FOIAs things, he should live stream it and walk people. Okay, so this is what I do here. I'm going to go ahead and type up, as boring and as mundane as that might sound. people would watch it and it would be incredibly helpful. And yeah, I mean, Sparky Lady
Sparky would probably watch.
It's absolutely. I think a lot of people would watch.
Yeah.
If we could get John to do a FOIA workshop or guide, it would be so amazing. It would make the process of trying it out feel less daunting. Maybe you can help facilitate. Trust me, I've asked him, and I think it's something that's stewing in his brain. But I think, and I'm gonna kind of think for John here. If I know John well enough, he's very particular about production and making sure that it sounds good and it looks good. He comes from that world, just like I do here. It was one of my main focuses. It's got to sound good and look good as best as I could. And we've improved upon it over the years as we've grown as a channel. But I absolutely think just simply live streaming it. I know I think it's because he can't control, like he's got to have things he's going to talk about, places he can go. And I think with that, it's a lot of, okay, I got to think and be quiet for about 10 minutes as I write this,
Great TV.
And genuinely, which it sounds boring, but I think watching that process, look, if people are watching, if people are watching live streams of pool balls from like a pool table, racing on a treadmill, they will watch this. You know what I mean? Like I just saw
maybe do some little ASMR with it or something.
I saw a guy,
why not both?
No, you could do both. I mean, you could do both. But what I'm saying is, I saw a guy the other day live streaming from his pizza making place, like where he's just hitting dough and rolling on, putting on toppings, and there's 4,000 people watching. Like, what's going on here? Like, it's weird, but I think people would absolutely find it valuable, and it would be a great place to go back and be like, let me see how hard this is, because it does seem daunting. Getting the wordings right, being specific, like he's saying, like that's years and years of practice where he's honed and perfected this skill. And so I think putting that on film is important, man. But again, like I think the reason why he doesn't do it is because it's not, he would want to edit out that part where he's just sitting there for 10 minutes trying to figure out what he's going to write, or whatever. I think there are even ways that he could figure out what is going to go in each spot and just show people, just plug it in literally. Okay, look, I wrote this up, and go through every sentence and what he was thinking when he wrote it. Like there are a lot of ways I think he could maybe speed it up so it doesn't feel boring or weird or awkward silence for him. But I think people would get a kick out of it. So yes, I guess we're trying. I would love for that to happen. What do you say, Ryan?
Wouldn't be anyone better. I'm constantly impressed by John. I was impressed that, yesterday there was a Congress FOIA, session. I had no idea about that, but people are, John is on the ball, and as soon as there's anything about it, he's on it. He's learning. So, man, I'm very impressed, and I found that, one of the most fascinating things he said in the last hour.
Yeah. What did you think about his take on Lou?
I thought he was very well said. I agree 100% with everything he said there. He said it very, very eloquently, better than I could say it.
I mean, like, as much as I hate to admit it, it's hard not to agree with that. If, again, and we're assuming this, but again, there was in the interview, I asked him, it sounds like a soft yes, which he did not dispute. And he hasn't said anything publicly about it yet.
I think we can assume that's a yes, and that's a yes, kind of an acknowledged yes without an actual acknowledgement or an apology. And he still seems to be doing that same behavior as, it seems to be that he has another sock puppet account, this robot mafia account.
Well, that's the problem about just having one, right? Because if you have one, and then what is it?
Copycats too.
How many other do you
attention.
have?
And I did really want him to say no when I asked him that question during the interview. I thought I was, giving him an opportunity to
clarify, to end the rumor,
to wash away all this rumors and nonsense. But he clearly couldn't say no because it's clearly him.
Can I suggest too that the actual sock puppet account, No Name Bureaucrat, Faceless beer cat, crap, robot mafia, whatever. Hey, you guys, go do your intelligence. That's the way I see it. Go do your intelligence on those accounts, live chat. Go do some truth seeking. I think it's fair game, frankly. But all that aside, and I know I've said this a lot, but people have come at me, like in comments and stuff, and are like, you have no right to say that these are, loose tweets. We don't know that he tweeted this, or they're saying that it's not a big deal what he's tweeted. Like, those are the two big things. And, I'm being judgmental about it. I just want to make it very clear that my passion comes from literally just the way that Lou Elizondo answered the question. The two things that he said, that he had alternate accounts. I'm not even going to use the word sock puppet. I'm going to be as objective as I can. What I gathered from the interview that is just factual is that Lou Elizondo has alternate accounts that this was his first justification, that he uses to collect intelligence, which you would suppose would be, I guess, on us. Like, that's kind of weird. He didn't elaborate. And that he uses it to defend insults. So that means he wants to anonymously defend insults. So that's it. Like, that's all we know, even if we never actually see the tweets. And that's what I had a problem with. And then, of course, just the way I thought it was a fair question that you were asking. If there weren't his accounts, he could have shut it down right there. Everything's over. If they are his accounts, he could have still explained his reasoning, but I thought it was aggressive the way he answered. I didn't think that I understand it was a rhetorical question. It wasn't your mom watching as well, rather. Would Lou Elizondo have said that if he had known your mom was watching? Would he have said that to me if I had asked that? I wonder. So that's where my passion came from. That's where my passion comes from. And, maybe more will be revealed about these other accounts. I would say, yes, my passion's increased if we find out that those accounts are his. But even if I pretend like it's the nicest tweets ever, I don't love it. And there were lots of nice accounts, nice tweets. I think I did bring that up in the last stream. If you go through all of
those, there were. We went over them. We went over a few of them.
But I just want to say that too. There were plenty of nice things said as well. So
She West with a $10 donation. Thank you so much. The people who trash John Greenewald online are the same ones who think they are the leaders of disclosure, and the second he releases any info, they talk about it amongst themselves without giving John any credit. I mean, yeah, that's probably happening for sure. Or they talk about it and reluctantly. I love just the idea that they reluctantly share the link. Like, here's what John Greenewald has here, guys. Like, it's pretty cool, you just wish John Green. I wish I asked him about the Wilson Davis documents. That's the one I forgot. That's the one I wanted to remember. Matthew Ryan with the $5 dono. Thanks, dude. Rest in peace, John Lear. Hope he gets the answers he so desperately wanted. Did John Lear pass?
Did not know.
Sounds like it. That's sad.
Oof. Man. I don't know. Did that just happen? Because I thought honestly, I said he was dead a couple years ago, and he totally wasn't. So are you sure that he passed away? Anyway, I mean, yeah. So we'll look into it, I guess, as I hear the clicking going on. But yeah, I mean, it was like, yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. And again, I have to do a better job of managing my expectations when it comes to what people say and who they are, who they claim to be, or their, whatever. And yeah, anyway, but the good thing, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've been reached out to, especially privately, by a lot of people who are just like, who I consider level-headed, rational folks, like John, who've reached out privately and been like, "Hey, man, that was a thing. Like, you should feel ashamed or bothered that you did that," and they are like, "I'm sorry, you're getting so much shit over this." Like, so that's been nice that we've gotten a lot of support. At least I have behind the scenes.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we're not being, outspoken critics of Lou Elizondo and all that he's done. We support him and what he's accomplished. And we're just, pointing out one small, well, I actually think it's kind of a big, but just, one, I think, legitimate issue, just asking questions about what publicly information is out there. And, just asking the question gets, vicious attacks, thrown at us, which, yeah, it's disappointing. It makes you not want to engage with the community. And that's, I think, kind of what they are intending. They want to drive anyone who doesn't have a voice that matches their own out of the discussion. And their tactics match that goal. And it's disappointing.
All I'm going to say is I'm going to sit back, wait and see. Let's see if we get a response. Let's give them room to sort of formulate maybe a response.
There's still time.
Yeah. The judge of character isn't that you don't make any mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes.
Everyone
the judge
does
of your
that.
character is how you respond to your mistakes once
Yes.
they're pointed out and you realize that you made them.
Yeah. But again, I mean, that's what we would like, but we're not demanding that. I just want to make that clear. Like, I don't think we have no right to demand anything out of Lou Elizondo.
Well, yeah, what can we hold over
than enough,
him?
Yeah, I mean, he's done more than enough for the conversation, in my opinion, that, I mean, we don't have a right to demand anything from anybody. So I just want to make sure that we emphasize that. Like, this is not a demand. These are just things that we would like to see happen, or suggestions, if you want to call them that, loose suggestions. They're the suggestions that I hope I would follow myself if I had made a mistake, and I've made mistakes, and I think I've done a pretty good job at pointing out those mistakes and fessing up to them when I made them. Which reminds me, the other day I made a mistake, and I should probably address it now. I had used the word mongoloid, which Michelle wonderfully brought to my attention is a pretty derogatory statement. In my brain, I think of it as caveman, but that's not an excuse. I shouldn't use the word. I shouldn't have used it at all to describe anything or anyone. I own that. I am now enlightened on exactly what that word means. And if I offended anybody, I apologize 1,000,000%. Definitely was not my intention. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you get emotional and you say things. Honestly, when I said it, I didn't think it was that bad. But then I educated myself on it, and I'm like, okay, this is bad. I should not say this. So yeah, I own it.
I'll learn. Yeah,
and now we can all move on. Like you could call me out on my BS anytime you want, man. I will address it. Every time. I mean, like, one of the biggest complaints on the show was our super chats and how we stop the show sometimes for the super chats. And I gave my reasonings as to why I do that sometimes. But I think now we found a nice balance where we could save the super chats, especially since now that the software allows us to save chats in a special section. Before, it didn't let us do that. If the super chat went away, we wouldn't be able to find it. If it got to a certain amount of, you know what I'm saying? It just wouldn't. We couldn't go all the way back in the history of the chat and just highlight them. But, so we make adjustments, man. Like, Rather got strung up for his questioning techniques, and had letting his opinion sometimes leak into the questions that he asks. And we own that. Like, we're not perfect. We do that sometimes. And it's really hard to sometimes. But then again, we've never been trained as journalists, Rather and I. Jane does a great job.
Clearly.
Yeah. Jane does a much better job at doing that. And so it's something we work on, but we own it. Like, we're okay. We can take the criticism. Like, we hear you guys and we make adjustments.
Right. In fact, we appreciate it. We appreciate the criticism.
We appreciate it.
We want to be better.
It makes us better. It makes us better. And especially if we get it a lot, like, we're going to try and adjust. But that doesn't mean we won't make the mistake in the future or in future episodes. Like, these are habits that I don't know how old you are, Rather, but I'm almost 42. Like, it's tough to change habits that you've done.
Yeah. I interrupt. I talk too much. I say too much. I know it. I see the comments. I'm working on it. I know, I do try to get better, but yeah, I mean, it's true. I got my journalism degree, but then, I failed my mother by, blogging about fashion and movies. And then I found UFOs, which was, interesting and revived my
journalistic passion,
my journalistic roots. Yeah, so you don't need to put me on any pedestal. You know, I'm just curious, like everybody else, and have been for a long time.
Somebody here, Jesse. I can't find the tweet. I don't know where it went, but yeah, Michelle just sent it to me. George Knapp had tweeted, I think yesterday or last night. It doesn't have a date on it. Hold on a second. Yeah, he tweeted today. Yeah, 4:34. So about an hour ago that he passed away. I'll read what George said. He said, friends and family of lifelong aviator John Lear reported that Lear died in his sleep last night at his home in Las Vegas. Lear was a pilot for the CIA during the Vietnam era and later flew cargo planes and pretty much everything else. More details as they become available. Rest in peace, John Lear. He was definitely an interesting character in this conversation. And God, he accomplished so. His family tree is insanely impressive. And to come out, usually when your parents are gods or, you know, considered the best at what they did, it's very difficult to follow that up. And John Lear did in a lot of ways. Rest in peace, John Lear. That's sad. Man.
I wonder what the
I agree.
like,
can I just share with you real quick where my greedy subconscious goes when I hear news like this sometimes?
Yeah.
And it's just I just hope he put something on video before he died or left in his will something where
I was wondering where his will goes.
You know, because when I've seen footage of his home and his little workspace, it's just crammed with all sorts of stuff. And God, I'd love to go through there. You know, I mean, it would probably take you months or years even. But I'm wondering, I always hope that these guys put in their will, in this drawer, in this box with this key, you'll find 10 files that I never revealed to the public. And I want you to put them online, or here's the password for the website that tweets it out to everybody, you know?
Well, that kind of happened after Edgar Mitchell died, didn't it? That a lot of those documents from his estate started kind of coming out of the woodwork, and
but they were like, they're leaked, you know, and like there was nothing that Edgar Mitchell was like, look at this, here's where it is, you know, and I want you to do this with it. Like it was just somebody going through random stuff and just found, you know. So I feel like it leaves room for manipulation.
Too, but yeah.
What?
I would love to go through John Lear's random stuff or Edgar Mitchell's random stuff, but point taken. I would love that, you know, silver bullet that was just waiting there for us.
Oh man, that would be so cool. Or even like I always hope like these, you know, like these either astronauts or Air Force guys that hold on, like the loyalty that they have to those to their country. I mean, but you know, obviously those contracts that they signed that where they're never allowed to talk about these things. I'm just shocked that we haven't gotten a few of those people to sit down in front of a camera, give a detailed confession, lock it away in a safe, and tell somebody, don't release this until I'm dead.
It's just on Frasier when John Glenn went on Frasier.
Right.
And fictionally talked about seeing UFOs in space as an astronaut, being told not to talk about them, and that a lot of what we see in movies today are close to reality. And that was like a fictional episode of Frasier, and like maybe that's how he did it. Maybe that was the only way he could do it. And then now we know he did. It helped to inspire Harry Reid and a lot of the disclosure that came out later.
Yeah.
And I missed that episode of Frasier. I'm gonna have to go
back
I
have a whole YouTube video about it. I mean, I can't monetize it obviously because
it's Frasier.
Yeah.
Well, there was and
there's a laugh track behind it, so it's like ironic because it's kind of like it's a laughing at the audience. Like it's bizarre. Yeah, I'll link it to you.
There was a really cool tweet, something to get excited about. Stephen Greenstreet is editing He had just turned in his edited first in the can episode of The Basement Office.
Oh, sweet.
I think he said it's 45 minutes long. So these are going to be a lot longer, a lot more detailed. I can't wait to see what he produces. You know, I know it'll be interesting to watch at the very least.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I think a lot of people are getting their pitchforks out for.
Yeah, the torches are being
Yeah,
doused
it's
in
like
kerosene
Basement
as we
Office
speak.
2.0.
Yeah, it really is. Dude, it's so stupid. I don't know why we get so ridiculous with this.
We just get so worked up at each other.
So worked up.
It's just when we reviewed They Live for Weird Hollywood, it kind of felt like you know the scene where they're fighting each other to put on the glasses. Like
Yeah.
that's so much is what UFO Twitter is. It was like we're just fighting over each other over like what reality we think is right. We want the other person to see things the way we do, and if they don't, they're bad or they're lying or they're stupid. And
Yeah.
just like goes on and on and on. And
What I mean, you also have to reference that fight as the best
oh yeah,
street fight ever put on film is that street fight. That street fight is so good from They Live that South Park recreated it frame by frame for the Timmy versus Jimmy
yeah, I remember
episode.
that.
I mean, it is a frame by frame recreation of They Live. That and the hallway fight from Old Boy. Those are the two best fight scenes I've ever seen on film.
Not as good a scene, but still good homage. Free Guy as well with Ryan.
Oh, I watched
Reynolds.
Free Guy. Yeah.
Yeah, there's they kind of redo that scene too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lots of They Live
it's,
fans.
It's
obviously,
absolute
so.
classic.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to talk about, because this was funny. I believe it or not, I watch a lot of other people's channels. I'm always trying to watch everything, even when sometimes I don't like them, just because I want to hear what's going on.
That's a good old hate watch.
Sometimes I hate watch. Sometimes it's more of a, I'm just wildly curious what fuels this point of view, and sometimes we'll get some pretty good nuggets out of there where I'm like, I didn't know that. Okay. Let me look into that. But there was this really funny one that came up on one of these channels, and it was about the James Webb Telescope and how NASA is already classifying the images from the James Webb Telescope because they're hiding alien bases in life, and they might have found who like something on Mars, even though the telescope's not even looking at Mars. And I just found it hilarious because it was so quick to jump to the conspiracy theory as to why maybe NASA might start classifying some of the images they get from the James Webb. My first thing that I think of is let's say we got insanely lucky, and the first picture we take with the James Webb, after really focusing it on a certain star system, and we get the biosignatures and the technosignatures that we believe we're going to find with this telescope, NASA would never put that out right away. They would declassify it because I think they would want to take those images, run them through the scientific method, and be 1 billion% sure. Like they would have to have scientific papers.
I mean, they classify it.
Written on the image before they just declassify it and share it with the world. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and I saw a headline for some show that talked about this, but I tried to look it up on the internet to see where that came from, and I wasn't able to. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because, first of all, it's not NASA that runs the James Webb Space Telescope. It's a different agency, and that agency has a list of programs that they're doing, and their scientists who propose those programs say, "Hey, look at this for certain hours." Those scientists, if they don't get their data, they're going to raise hell and tell us about it. And those images that the scientists get, we're not going to get them right away. They're not going to be publicly available because the scientists are going to go and do their due diligence,
They
do the
get dibs
scientific
first.
operations on that.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, those will be secret until they're published, but I don't think they're classified. It's just
That's what I'm saying. Like
scientific courtesy.
it was a ridiculous theory. Like, I mean, but this is where people go.
I think I remember hearing something like about with SETI and organizations, if it's probably similar to when people reported UFO encounters and agents showed up to try to find out what happened and control the conversation. This is a national security topic. So I recall like hearing about like if there is evidence of life that you put it goes through a chain at that point. But I don't know where they came from or if that's based on anything. An example, the only other example we have is the WOW signal, which you could say was released prematurely.
No, it was pure conjecture
So
and speculation.
I don't know where that came.
Yeah, it was just conjecture and speculation sold as devious truth. Like, and I was just shocked. I'm like, how do they not understand how that process works? Like, there's nothing devious about it. It's got to go through the scientific method. Like like you said, rather, those astronomers, the people who booked the time, or maybe even some the universities that paid to help fund that telescope, or whatever entities help fund the telescope, get first dibs on what they see. And maybe in that contract of funding that telescope is the idea, like, hey, we could keep this information and do whatever we want with it.
But do we, the American people, like ever truly have first dibs on this topic?
No.
So my point being, like, we just really, I mean, I'm not going there. I don't think that probably there's anything that's interesting. It's from the James Webb telescope. I really don't. I don't have any gut hunch or intel about that. But ultimately, I would think if they did find something really great, any scientist in that group, there's somebody, in that group that's like, hey, this guy's weird. This is going to be classified. Like, I think they're allowed. I think that's allowed to be done. Right. And that's been, who knows how many times that's been done in the past. And I've supposed that for a long time for NASA. And I know, like, it's so woo-woo. But the thing is, the secret space program or astronauts, there were more than 30 astronauts that were part of the classified astronaut program. Like, I think that was like disbanded, and maybe I don't want to say the date. It was disbanded at some point. There was a New York Times article about it. That's how I found out about it, because you only find out about it after the fact. Yeah. So my point being, this classic is a national, this is a national security topic. There's protocol. We have NASA now in the classified ODNI report, right? So I would think that there's a protocol and there are secret channels that anything that's proving ET life would have to go through before there's any kind of press conference. And I've even caught NASA in comments and things that they've said that implies that they know a lot more than they act like they know, and that they're priming themselves for that press conference. And maybe at this point, maybe they're okay if James Webb Telescope just finds something, because they're like, well, we already got our talking point, so go find it, guys. Galileo Project, and we're ready now. So I mean, that's my take. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they're definitely having those discussions about how they would present that evidence to the public if it came out. They published a paper recently about what they call the cold scale, about the scale of how, if evidence comes in, what that means for how likely you can say evidence of aliens exists. And essentially anything that James Webb can do, short of actually finding a mothership, an alien ship out there, by looking at these signs from planets, they're not going to be able to confirm aliens. They're just going to be able to say, hey, it's likely that they might be there. And they do have a whole framework of how to communicate that information responsibly to the press, so that they don't have the headline saying James Webb Space Telescope confirms aliens, because they don't want to oversell what they find. They want to approach it in a reasonable manner. But yeah, I mean, I do wonder, you do make a good point. If they did find an intergalactic spaceship that they just happened to point at, I do that. I do wonder how they'd handle that.
I mean, think about that show you were listening to, too, Lou. Like, think about what people would go crazy with that.
No, they would go absolutely nuts. That, right? I mean, I'm ready for the mothership. I thought getting incredibly lucky would be just pointing something at a planet and being able to determine pretty quickly, okay, wow, there might be some biotechnical signatures on this planet, or signs of life, or the perfect, the perfect soup recipe for life in a solar system. But to catch a galactic freaking Federation spaceship on the first photo.
Well, they must be everywhere. They're everywhere then. That's all that
is. That would be lucky beyond lucky. And I think it would be. Just insanely lucky. And I think I'd be okay with them being like, okay, we're classifying this. Like, this ain't getting out. Someone called Third Phase of Moon. I'm not even sure if this is the real account, but I'll read the comment anyway. Yes, the targets have been chosen for the super secret first images that will be released. Jane Rigby, the James Webb Telescope. Just because they have super secret targets and images doesn't mean that they're not going to eventually share them. They, I'm sure, have targets on their science board of the things that they want to get accomplished, or they want to confirm or move on from, or you know what I mean? They're doing science, and there's nothing. They're not targeting like.
You can go to your website and see exactly how they do it. And there are a lot of photos that they're going to take with their early access program, which they will release right away. At least that's what they claim to. But then there's others that need scientific rigor.
Yeah, NASA has
all of them need scientific rigor.
This is from space.com. NASA has been teasing these images through the launch and commissioning campaign, but project personnel are staying strictly mum about their targets. So NASA, rather, whatever, for what that's worth. And somehow my phone knows I'm trying to read this. Well, let me scroll. Yes, the targets have been chosen for the super secret first images that will be released. Jane Rigby, the James Webb Telescope Operations Project Scientist at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. So NASA's on it. Of course NASA's on it, guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, NASA's going to have a say in this telescope. And like 5x5 News pointed out earlier, it's a like you said, it's essentially a group of scientists and NASA coming together, making the telescope, launching it through NASA, building it, I think, through NASA, if I'm not mistaken, and doing the PR probably through NASA.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, all of these things, whatever they take pictures of, unless they're like, Hubble, where like Hubble today, they just released an image of a planet. Was it 60 billion years away of a star? It's the farthest star that they've ever taken a picture of. I'm sure they probably have been sitting on that for months, and they just had to do the math and double check and triple check. And there's probably a paper being released on it soon. You know what I mean? Like that's just science, man. Science is gonna science.
Well, think about how many times they've talked about water being on Mars. There'd be a big news article. There's water on Mars, and then a year later, there's water on Mars. There used to be water on Mars. Like
it's like bacon. Bacon's good for you, then bacon's bad for you. Then it's good for you, then it's bad for you. It just choose a side, bacon. Anyway,
bacon is good. Aliens are real.
You guys, I gotta get out of here right at 6:00 because I'm going on Priscilla Stone's show, the Quantum Witch Cafe. So, guys, as soon as I'm done here, I'll be over there.
Have fun.
I won't even have time to take off my tie or hat. So join us. I wish, damn it, Priscilla, put your link in. I don't know if you can put. You know what? Yes, you can. If I make you a moderator, Priscilla, you can put a link to our conversation. Hold on, let me find you in the chat here. Where are you? In the actual chat, not like our StreamYard chat. Where is her name?
Right here. Edinburgh UFO Festival. I will be there next week, April 7th through the 9th. It's way down in South Texas. I don't know if there's any Texans out there. You can go check out the links. Oh shoot, I wish I had the speakers up right here, but I don't want to say it wrong. But there's some familiar faces, so I'll be covering it. So
Priscilla, I just made you a moderator. You should be able to put a link now, so give it a shot. I'll link it at the top of the channel. Oh, look at this. Stefan Badone already did it.
Oh, Peter Robbins will be at the Edinburgh Festival next week, and I'm talking over you.
Is there a virtual link?
No, actually in person. Like, I will actually be at an actual, and they asked me to come cover. I was like, yeah, heck yeah, I've been wanting to go to this event forever. So, yeah, it'll be a good time. So maybe if you're in Texas, maybe the last minute, weekend out of it.
Awesome. Love it. Cool. Rather, what are you working on?
I just filmed a video on nuking a tunnel through the moon. I'll hope to publish that probably tomorrow.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're going to be talking about that video in the second hour of Friday's show. And we've got for Fridays for our last show before we go on our big break. We've got Christopher Plain from the Debrief. He was gonna come talk about this planet, and then it turned out to be a big dud. But he's still gonna come on the show. We're still gonna talk about it. We got other stuff to talk about with Chris.
He's got a lot of good stuff on the Debrief
IAA. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. He's always doing stuff. So he's always a fun conversation as well. So we'll be doing that on Friday. Before we get out of here, I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes. Want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you guys so damn much for all of the suggestions for our game, and also for the donations from Laura Campbell and Bryant. Let's see here, Matthew Wright. You guys, thank you so much. If I miss yours, I do apologize. Laura Campbell, thank you all so damn much for donating to the show. It's not necessary, but it does help. We are a public access channel. We're fueled by viewers like you, so thank you so much. And also, new Red Panda video out, so go check that out. That's something that's on my list tonight. As soon as I get off the show with Priscilla, I'm going to go check out that video. It's can't remember what it's about.
He never disappoints.
He never disappoints though. So go check out his channel and check out what he's popping out. And let's see here. What else? What am I missing? Links. We got links for Jane. We got links for John Greenewald. We've got links for the merch store. We've got links for the Discord, which we hold a conversation every Friday night. So subscribe to the Discord. And guys, remember, if you can't donate to the show through Patreon or Super Chats or anything like that, the show's 100% free. There's no paywall here. So go back and enjoy all of our interviews for free anytime you want. All we ask is give us a like, a share, subscribe, tell people about the show, help it grow. And that's it. Thank you all so damn much for coming aboard, getting weird with me here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. Until Friday, for Rather Be Squidding, UFO Jane, Kyle. We will see you guys on Friday. Have a great night. Enjoy your Thursday. Love you all. Peace.
News 12 Sports with Pat Murphy.
Great news regarding Bills tight end Kevin Everett. He moved his arms and legs today, and doctors now believe that's the wrong video, by the way. That is not the right video.
I'm going to tell you all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.